Today's video is brought to you by Skillshare. Yes, those fine folks are sponsoring me yet again. But if you somehow haven't heard, Skillshare is an online community of millions who come together to take the next step in their creative journey. Whatever your passion may be, they have lessons ready for your eager brain to absorb. All kinds of art. I don't just mean drawing and painting. They've got that, of course, but I also mean digital, animation, graphic design, music, film, cooking, self-care, and plenty more. There's something for everybody. And they cater to your schedule, not the other way around. You can filter out the length of videos, and they keep track of how far along you are if you need to pause. They work around what's best for your busy life, but keep you organized at the same time, which I greatly appreciate. And this time I'd like to recommend YouTube Success Script, Shoot, and Edit with MKB HD. Like I said last time, I tend to get a lot of requests on how to make a successful YouTube channel, and quite frankly, I don't know quite yet. I'm not doing this for a living, but this dude certainly knows what's up. I'm certainly learning a thing or two, and this is like a starter course here. So if you're serious about becoming a content creator, this is a fantastic place to kick things off. As you grow, you can learn more with different courses. Skillshare gets as nuanced as you need. But if you're still on the fence, then go click on the link in the description below, because the first 1,000 people to use my link gets their first month completely free. You will be astonished with what you can accomplish in just a month's time. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring us, and let's get on with the video. Welcome back to Sonic Speed Reading. And while I was originally planning to do a quick wrap-up and then do an overall review of this arc, there's a lot here to actually dive into, because while this is just dealing with the aftermath, this is 3 months worth of stories all the same. So yeah, there's still a lot left to dig into, and if this is your first time with us, please be sure you go check out the playlist. This is the end of a crazy big story. Do not start here. But for everybody else, let's keep on keeping on. So issue 30 picks up right where 29 ended, with Supersonic getting himself yeeted along with the Warp Topaz into, well, somewhere, we don't know. And this is something I like about comics. Usually once a story ends in other media, they'll do a quick little something and then roll credits. But since comics have to keep going month after month, sometimes you just gotta sit in it. The story has hit its climax, but the camera's gotta keep rolling, and now you get to watch all the exhaustive cleanup. And that's the point of these next few issues. It's here to clear off the playmat and get things nice and organized so the next set of stories can take place. And also in this case, so Evan Stanley, who takes on the role as head writer going forward, doesn't have to deal with a lot of loose ends. But not everything is tied up quite so neatly, and in certain cases we will see characters used to tease different stories that Ian Flynn will work on down the road. Tails, Amy, and Knuckles are back to normal, but obviously concerned for their blue buddy. And only Knuckles is feigning any kind of confidence, sure that Sonic will come floating down any minute now. And we will see that running gag as his confidence starts to waver as this issue carries forward. Now, all three of them are confident in Sonic's ability to recover and return, but all of them are worried nonetheless. They're practically family after all. Eggman, on the other hand, has no doubt in his mind that Sonic will make his return. He has known Sonic longer than any of his friends have, and he knows it's only a matter of time before the rodent returns to ruin his fun. So while all of Sonic's idiot friends are busy looking skyward for any sign of the Sparkle Hog, he makes his move and rushes off towards the Resistance shuttle to make his escape and plot his next attack while the little boy Blue is MIA. He still has to get it back up and running, but thankfully he was playing 4D chess while everyone else was trying to save the world, and only used non-essential components while they were creating the multi-warp portal to, help stop the metal virus. And while the heroes are spacing on the threat of Eggman, they're also spacing on Zavok and the rest of the Deadly Six. But unlike Iggy, Big Red isn't the type to slink away. If he has any fight left in him, then that's exactly what he'll do. Battered and beaten, he makes his presence known, and Cream basically speaks for the entirety of the Sonic fandom when she tells him to get lost already. But it should come to no surprise as Sonic fans that Zavok tells her flatly no, and raises his hand to attack the little rabbit. But she quickly reminds him who is going to win a popularity contest in this fandom, and sicks her chow after the Bowser Faker. And anyone who's played Sonic Advance 2 will tell you that you do not want to be on the bad side of Cheese the Chow. But he's not alone in his attack, as we have the Chaotix and Silver jump in as well. And despite whatever you may think of Zavok, after everything he's endured, he's holding his own pretty well. Granted, nobody in this fight is in tip-top shape at the moment, but still gotta give it up for the gumption here. here. Thankfully, this story doesn't have to continue to keep its focus on Zavok for too long, as he's finally held in place by Silver's psychic abilities, but it's taking everything Silver has to keep him in check. I also love how we have Shadow just not partaking at all. He just walks by all this nonsense. He didn't like Lost World. He ain't bothering with this. So yes, Zavok is captured for the time being, and might as well let you know now, I'm not gonna waste a lot of time going over every member of the Deadly Six. Long and short of it, they're still on the loose in the world below, and Flynn will handle that in a different story arc. As far as we're concerned, their participation in the Metal Virus story is done. We also get this quick scene between Knuckles and Rouge by the Master Emerald. Nothing major, but it's always fun to see them play Batman and Catwoman. Or, well, I guess more Batwoman and Echidna Man. She scolds her for not watching Eggman as they just discover that he escaped and tells her to get off his emerald. Rouge basically tells him to chill and rustles his jimmies as she takes off, which, it's always fun to see, and leaves Knuckles to stare up at the sky, waiting for his friend to pop back. Any minute now. We then shift our focus over to Gemroll, who has been trying to track down the source of an Ignet signal, which happens to be coming from Orbot and Cubot, who alert their boss that they've been spotted. Eggman, who almost has the shuttle up and running, commands Metal Sonic to retrieve the duo. And Metal decides to do this by shoving his hand through the back of Gemroll. God, wow. Basically, he's using the robot like a drink carrier. I mean, I get it, it's very efficient. You get 3 robots instead of 2, and you're only using one hand to do it. How convenient. Yeah, this is very brutal. It's one of those unwritten rules in kids' media. You can't show extreme violence against any of the fleshy friends, but robots? Well, anything goes with robots. They're just metal and circuitry after all. No way this will be scarring imagery for children. This attack, as you would expect, sets off the rest of the cast. Whisper fires off a shot, Metal deflects it, but in turn loses his grip on Gemroll. So Metal returns to the original mission and just snatches the Shapebots mid-air and rendezvous with the shuttle. Silver has his hands full containing Zavok, and nobody else is quick enough to cover the distance between themselves and Eggy, except for Shadow. And before Silver can even ask for assistance, Shadow is rushing straight towards the shuttle. But just as he's about to catch up, he's intercepted by Metal Sonic. And this goes to show why Eggman keeps this robot around, as he not only holds his own against Shadow, but technically wins a fight against him. This just isn't your arc, is it, Shadow? Still, this is a lot of fun to see these two square off. We don't get it too often. And a couple of these panels definitely give me some Sonic OVA vibes. But yeah, Metal's goal isn't to destroy Shadow. It's simply to delay him so Eggman can escape. So he sends out a shockwave that temporarily buries Shadow under a bunch of pine trees. And while Shadow gets himself loose from that mess, that gives Metal and Eggman enough time to make their escape, with Omega's head in tow. Oh dear. And while they touch upon it later, let's just get it out of the way now. Dr. Starline, who, if you remember, was unceremoniously kicked into his own warp portal and out of the story. We get a quick page showing that he clearly still adores Eggman, but believes that Eggy can only truly succeed with the help of Starline and his focus. We see him hanging out in an Eggman warehouse surrounded by egg pawns, so maybe they still see him as an ally? I don't know. We don't get that explored until the Bad Guys miniseries. The point of this page is just to let you know that the platypus is still around and still plotting. But like the Deadly Six, we are done with him for now. And let's keep wrapping things up. They show this off a little bit later, once all the craziness of Angel Island is sorted out, but Silver finally returns to his home in the future. And once again, they don't show how he time travels, but oh well. And if you recall way back when he first showed up in issue 8, Silver was around in the present during Sonic Forces, and while Ian did his best to explain why Silver was there at all in that prequel comic, the game itself never really bothered to explain, well, anything. But the comic uses that opportunity to do something interesting with the Trunks wannabe. Once Silver returned to his timeline after the war, his world was empty and all the plant life had turned to metal. Something was off about his future. So he once again returned to Sonic's time to figure out what happened. And as we discovered, it was the world overrun by the virus. But now we bookend Silver's story by confirming, with a Sonic CD reference, that they have indeed saved the world. As we see for the very first time in any Sonic media, what Silver's future actually looks like when it's not in the middle of an apocalypse. They keep it vague, we don't see anyone, just a city skyline, and you can tell it's the future because there are holograms dotted around the skyscrapers. It's not a really big deal, but it's nice that it's here. And then we shift our focus focus over to a character who has not once appeared during the Metal Virus, and that is Blaze the cat. As longtime Sonic fans know, she is actually a princess in a different dimension, so she's not always present in Sonic's universe, and that's its own thing. But again, we're seeing something we've never seen before in Sonic media, and that is her palace in the Soul Dimension. And I should note, while earlier Archie could get away with pretty much whatever they wanted, all of this stuff now needs to be approved by Sega. So this is as close to canon as these locations are gonna get. At least until Sonic Team changes their minds on a whim, but hey, if they ever bring in Silver's future or Blaze's palace, well, that's a good problem as far as I'm concerned. But we cannot keep all of our attention on the pretty architecture, as a meteor crashes onto the palace courtyard. Blaze, ever the dutiful princess, yes, I said princess, despite not ever seeing a king or queen anywhere, she heads on over to investigate, only to discover that this isn't a meteor. It's Sonic the Hedgehog. Thankfully, he did not warp along with the Metal Virus into the sun, but he has instead landed himself into the Soul Dimension, ruining Blaze's lawn in the process. And while we did jump around a little bit, that's basically where issue 30 ends. And we're going to cover the next couple, but I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit, because the point of all of this was just, again, to get the characters back into a default position to provide closure or provide teasers for upcoming stories. And they continue to do just that as we transition from the immediate aftermath on Angel Island to the restoration efforts going forward. As you can imagine, the Metal Virus has left quite the impact on the world of Sonic. Starting with Amy, who hands off the leadership position of the restoration effort over to Jewel the Beetle, who has thoroughly established herself with her organization skills. And this serves two purposes. One, this will free up Amy to go on future adventures, as crunching numbers and organizing release efforts is tedious, strenuous work, and it doesn't make for great reading. So we can't stick Amy behind a desk for too long. She needs to be front and center with the rest of the main cast. And two, this is going to give Jewel a sense of purpose in the wider world of the comic universe. So far, she hasn't had much to do outside of run a museum in a tiny town and play sidekick to Tangle. But now that she's on the world stage with Sonic's crew, it's time for her to step up her role as well. Jewel is not someone who's ever going to get a great deal of attention in these stories. She does play a supporting role, but every time we check in with her, we're going to see a bit of growth in her character and literally the world itself. This is a nice way to get one of the core game characters back into default position while not dropping everything that's been built up with the Resistance turning into the Restoration, so on and so forth. You know, the games are never going to bother explaining why Knuckles became a general or what happened with the Resistance once the war was over. None of that stuff. That's why IDW Sonic is going to hopefully make a great companion piece to the series. May or may not be technically canon, but it's never going to get in the way of the canon of the game. Hopefully, anyway. We've had 0 mainline games released since Forces came out, and this book was based off of the aftermath of that game. But back on track. Point is, the restoration effort is now needed more than ever, as there are a lot of missing folks since the Metal Virus has been destroyed. And the usually quiet Chaotix Detective Agency is quite busy with missing persons cases. Unfortunately, they're not super organized. They can't keep up with all of these work requests, especially when it's just these 3 boys trying to take care of everything. Thankfully, Cream, the Chows, Gemerald, and Vanilla all come in to relieve the pressure, as Vanilla goes all boss mama as soon as she walks in the door, as she has Gemerald take in the missing persons database, the Chow organize all the paperwork, and putting herself and Cream onto the phones, leaving the Chaotix free to go out there and help people out, all while making Vector quite hungry for Rabbit. Lovely nod to Sonic X there. Lola Bunny wished she had this kind of boss lady power. Go get 'em, mama. Yes, it is indeed Wabbit season, but it's not the only time Adam's art quenches some thirsty fans. We'll have a couple more instances a little bit later. We now have to turn our attention to a set of characters we have not seen since the very start of the saga. Ruff and Tumble, who, while cured from the Metal Virus, have been trapped at the bottom of a mine this entire time. That is until Tangle drops her tail down to rescue the duo, leaving the poor tailless Tumble a little jealous and heartbroken. But as soon as they're rescued, they promise to go back to their rotten ways and the duo run off, only to get themselves lost and, spoilers, they're gonna be in jail very soon. But another important point of this scene is showing how Tails is handling the loss of Sonic, as Tangle asks him how he's doing directly, and he reassures her that he's doing just fine. Sonic's beaten the odds more than a few times, and at this point, Tails knows he's gonna return, and in the meantime, Sonic is gonna be counting on him to keep the peace. This, just like way back in issue 2, feels like the comic addressing how poorly Tails was handled in Sonic Forces. Sonic would not keep Tails around on adventures if he had to constantly save him or keep him out of trouble. Tails is there because he can do what few others can. He can keep up with Sonic, and the two of them have grown a lot together. Tails is more than capable on his own, and Sonic himself has grown to rely on him. And they display all of that within a few panels. Good on them. And Tangle points out that Sonic probably wouldn't want them sitting around worrying and moping either. He'd want them to celebrate. So, they plan to do just that and start sending out invites. And that leaves Rouge to deliver Shadow's invitation. And to no one's surprise, he declines. But this scene is here to address how Shadow was handled during his brief time during the Metal Virus saga. Realizing that he goofed up, misinterpreting Sonic warning him to run as cowardice instead of advice to maintain control of the virus, he thinks to himself that it's unacceptable form of the ultimate life form, and I think most everybody agrees. I don't know if this particular scene sits super well with me. It does feel a little jarring, and I don't think Shadow was completely in the wrong with everything that Sonic was talking about back then, but it's nice to know that they are listening. And the nice thing about this comic book, it's a continuing storyline. This isn't the only canon you're gonna find Shadow the Hedgehog, and this certainly isn't where his story ends. At least the writers understand that fans are frustrated with his interpretation, and they're doing their best to let you know they are aware. And I do think Rouge plays something as an audience surrogate because she seems exhausted and somewhat irritated every time she interacts with Shadow here going forward. But after Shadow tells her that he owes Sonic, but he's gone now, she gives him a quick smile. I think she knows that deep down, the Shadow that we know and love is still there. Just, critique where you have to and be patient. The long and short of it, this is not his story. And I'm not going to be reading through any more essays and the comments about this guy. I get it, you don't like how he was interpreted, whatever. It's time to party. Despite all the work left to do, despite Sonic still being missing, they all have accomplished quite a lot and they've earned a celebration. We get a well-deserved splash page of pure joy, something we have not seen for quite a long time. And while Vector's proportions look a little off while he's dancing, this is a damn sight better than the last time we saw him cut loose at a party. And like I said earlier, Adam's art further fuels this thirsty fan base with a cute little back and forth between Tangle and Whisper. The wolf is carefully keeping an eye on the Babylon rogues, who, spoilers, attempt to steal jewelry, but it's not there thanks to Rouge. I'm not going to waste my time with that, it's there. Point is, they don't see themselves as heroes, and they're not going to be interacting with the rest of the cast. But they were still invited all the same because they did help save the world, and I do think it's precious that they showed up at all. And while this is a kid's comic, they can't show you anybody drinking. But the rosy cheeks of Tangle tell a different story. No way she's not a party girl. She is sloshed. And with an arm around Whisper, which gets her wagging her adorable little tail, Tangle tells the pup to chill out and have some fun. But unfortunately, before they can do that, Eggman crashes the party. And wow, I love that silhouette on the last page of issue 31. It's just fantastic art. I'll get into that in just a second. But I do want to address a few comments I've been seeing as this coverage has been going on, something I've been pushing in these episodes, and that is that the Metal Virus arc would make for one hell of a video game. And it wouldn't be much of a Sonic game without one final boss fight with Eggman. And no, I know Perfect Chaos and Bio Lizards and Solarises exist. I know there are different final boss encounters, but Eggy has shoved in one last boss fight into the last set of games fairly regularly, and he's not about to stop now, as he attacks in an oversized Omega mech. Egg? There's an egg pun in there somewhere, sort it out amongst yourselves. But yeah, this isn't just a giant Omega robot. Eggman is using Omega himself as the core. Omega apparently is a very valuable bot, and his combat routines can cause quite the havoc when used in the wrong hands. And Eggy doesn't stop there, because as Gemroll attacks, he launches off a set of wires that incorporates Gemroll into this giant mech. This further amplifies the capabilities of these machines, and this has two of Eggman's most powerful wayward robots back under his control, and they're going to show how potent of a force they can be combined. And just to deviate for a moment, this dynamic pose Adam draws for General immediately made me think of Spaz's art back in the early days of Archie, his Mecha Sonic stuff specifically. Now Spaz is one hell of an artist. He can emulate pretty much every official Sonic art style out there. But early on, he really had a style unlike anything else in the franchise, bringing in a lot of detail while adding a sense of dimension to these characters. They don't look like just flat drawings. They look like they're taking up a 3D space. And yeah, some of it looks a little weird nowadays, but the talent is undeniable, and his insane skills kept me coming back month after month, even with stories I didn't particularly like even as a kid. And they sure as hell inspired me all the time as an artist. And I would not be surprised in the slightest to learn that Adam Bryce Thomas also drew inspiration from Spaziante. Either way, Adam is easily one of my most favorite artists currently working on Sonic. This is fantastic stuff. And in some fun ways, it's cool to see what I used to think was just a treat, that being the covers of Sonic comics, actually carry forth into the pages themselves. I can't tell you, after growing up with early Archie, how nice it is to see consistently fantastic art in Sonic comic books, because that was not a thing for a very long time. And also to stick on the art, like I said, Adam knows how to get Sonic Twitter all hot and bothered. I think it's time we finally turn our attention back to Sonic himself, and to a set of pages that just got all of those shippers up in a tizzy for a couple of days with these shots of Sonic. As for what's actually going on in this scene, basically Sonic's lost his memory. He has no idea who he is, and Blaze is trying to figure it all out. And while this is a fun callback to Mr. Tinker and a fun premise that we could really expand upon, this was really only here to delay the inevitable return of the Hedgehog. We spend most of our time with the supporting cast in these 3 issues. We really only get this one scene at tea time, and the next time they focus on Sonic, Blaze is pulling out her set of magical MacGuffins, the Soul Emeralds, and uses them to help Sonic get back to his senses. Yes, we really had 2 sets of emeralds and a warp topaz help sort out all of the issues of this saga. So yes, while they spread these scenes apart, this is really sorted out in no time flat, and Blaze's short cameo comes to a close as she sends Sonic back to his home dimension, but not before Sonic speaks for the fanbase and tells her to stop by from time to time. Everybody misses her, and with that, he's sent off in a blaze of glory. And just in time too. While his friends have been holding their own against the Omega Mech, things aren't looking good. Thankfully, they at least managed to cut General loose after Tails and Rouge tracked down a port so Tails could hack into the program. Wasn't too hard to find because, as they assumed, Eggman built this bot in a rush, and it is a little janky in design. But it is still a threat. But with General now loose, it does cut down the capability of the robot. But Eggman isn't defenseless as he just pulls out a Glock and tries to ice Tails. Everyone gives Shadow so much shit for packing heat, yet you got Eggman here packing a very powerful pistol. On top of this, Omega himself is doing his best to fight against the programming of the larger mech. So caught between being forced to attack his friends and wanting to kill Eggman, the bot stalls, leaving an opening for the characters to attack. Again, I appreciate how Flynn writes this like a proper video game boss fight. Even sets up how the weak points would be laid out. This is awesome. Unfortunately, all of this is not quite enough as Eggman reins in Omega and renews his attack against the exhausted heroes in Spiral Hill Village, only to be interrupted by the returning Sonic. And let's appreciate this cool little doodle of him brushing off Ash while standing in the middle of a gigantic fireball like it ain't no thing. This might be the closest we ever get to an official burning Sonic form, so soak it in. And of course, with the arrival of Sonic, this battle is wrapped up nice and quick. Sonic just cuts loose Omega, who then turns back around and takes out his giant doppelganger in a barrage of bullets and missiles. But once his armory is depleted, Omega falls to pieces again. This leaves Eggman once again cursing Sonic, saying that he'll be back again with yet another scheme. And Sonic, while in a JoJo reference, tells him to bring it on, because he will always be ready to take him on. And as Eggman flies off, Sonic looks on, hoping that someday Robotnik will come around. It's a tall order to be sure, but Sonic's a hopeful one, and after seeing what he can potentially be with Mr. Tinker, you can better understand where Sonic is coming from. And of course, Amy runs in for a hug, followed by Tails, followed by everybody as Tangle grabs them all and brings them in for a giant group hug. But unfortunately, a hero's work is never done, as Spiral Hill is still on fire after the Eggman attack. So they spend the rest of the night quelling the flames and getting things back in order. As the morning sun peeks over the horizon, Sonic finally takes a moment to sit back, relax, and reflect, appreciating how good it is to be back, to be healthy again, and hoping that he can someday see his friends Silver and Blaze without the need of a world-ending event to bring them all together. But even after everything he has just gone through, Sonic's not the type to lay around for too long. And with a stretch, he hops off the roof and runs towards the morning light, excited for whatever adventure this new day brings. And with that, I am finally done summarizing the Metal Virus Saga. Was it perfect? Nah, not by any stretch. There's a lot to nitpick here. Why were the gloves effective if the virus can only affect living tissue? Why didn't the characters just cover themselves from head to toe in hazmat suits? The characterization of Shadow certainly rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way, and a lot of the time it felt like Ian was writing himself into a corner, trying to tackle every possible solution for this virus, only to squash it so they can continue to raise the stakes, which inevitably just left to us once again returning to the Chaos Emeralds to fix all the problems here. And on top of all that, I can't help but consider Sonic's morality here. Like, I get it, I know we have to go back to a default status each and every time, but at the end of the day, if Eggman is causing this much carnage and drama, at some point you have to ask yourself, when is it morally okay to keep him alive, as opposed to just getting rid of him once and for all? And obviously, we know the real world answer. It's the same reason why Batman won't kill the Joker, even though at this point, it's obviously the more morally justified thing to do. Not even out of revenge, we just know time and again he's going to escape and he's going to kill a lot more people, and you could save a ton of lives if you just took him out of the equation. And that is the same case with Eggman, who literally caused a zombie apocalypse. Now, Ian is not oblivious to this situation. They bring this up time and again. This is an obvious thing that Sonic has to tackle and deal with through this entire saga. This has been building since his first encounter with Mr. Tinker. And by the end of it, I still don't know if I think that Sonic is right here. We use that conversation with Tangled to kind of justify everything he's been doing, saying that he is not responsible for Eggman or what he does. And also, you know, he can't really waste time lamenting what has happened. They're in the middle of this now and they got to get it sorted out, which I do agree that is far more important than having a pity party. But at the same time, I don't think Espio was wrong in criticizing Sonic. Shadow certainly wasn't. Was he sloppy and got himself zombified? Yeah, that was a dumb move. I really do think Shadow should have been used as a counterpoint to how Sonic handles the situation, who got himself infected just by spinballing into an infected. Shadow should be more precise. He should be used again as a counter argument to Sonic's morality. And if he was taken out, I really don't think it should have been his own fault. I don't think Shadow should have been the central focus, as a lot of fans seem to want him to be. But at the same time, he's a far more efficient fighter than this. Him not knowing that Sonic was infected or how he was holding his virus in check, none of that made sense to me. Like, Shadow should have all that ready to go. And in turn, he should be used to further Sonic's guilt. Starline as well was a great counterpoint to Eggman, who directly addresses this unhealthy cycle these two characters seem to be in. And it's just frustrating because I guess we all know, as longtime fans, that this always has to go back to the set standard. Especially nowadays, where they can't be as bold as the Archie series just let them be before. Again, I do at least appreciate that Ian is aware of this and is at least directly criticizing this unhealthy cycle that these two seem to be in. At the end of the day, Sonic still has to be seen as a hero. That's why Tails couldn't come up with a solution. That's why Sonic himself couldn't have been infected, because he technically was the one that screwed up, let Tinker go, let Metal Sonic go, and in turn made everything nice and convenient for Starline to get all of this mess in order. And Sonic being the hero here, he still has lessons to learn, and he still had to clean up this mess he somewhat helped create. And in that sense, I think the story works very well. I do have some other gripes, but another major one I have is that the saga just happened way too soon in the life of this book. This world feels empty. It doesn't feel like we spent enough time building this particular universe or spent enough time with these characters, both old and new. And I am seeing elements that were used from Ian's run on Archie. We can see disparate story ideas from the world roboticization stuff, and I know that this was just the seed of an idea back in his mind back then. Nothing was really planned out, but this really feels like this would have had a lot more impact in a more expansive world like Archie. post or pre-reboot. But on that particular front, I think part of the blame lies at the feet of Sega themselves. 30 years of this franchise is more than enough time to have a more defined universe at this point. And whether or not it's canon, this comic is based on the world of modern Sonic. And while we've had the term modern Sonic for a grand total of 10 years now, we're still not even sure what's going on with him and classic Sonic. Are they the same person? Are they from two different worlds? We don't know. You can tell they still have to remain vague on elements like how Silver can time travel, and I get it. It leaves more room for crazy random adventures for years to come in the games. How else can they explain why Lost Text just suddenly appeared out of nowhere? They can't just show off the entire world. Oh. Well, never mind. I guess they can show off the world. They just keep the maps inconsistent from game to game. Perfect. On the other hand, though, I do think this book relies a little bit too much on the readers having a general knowledge of recent Sonic games. Ian does his due diligence with introducing the Deadly Six before they properly make their grand appearance, but this still feels a little rushed. Again, if we had a little bit more time expanding this universe, maybe had a story arc featuring the Six prior to the Metal Virus, this could have gone a long way. Then again, you can't leave Eggman out of the picture for too long, and you need to establish him as the big bad in a big way, and they kinda did do just that. Look, this particular criticism only works from the perspective of somebody brand new to all things Sonic, and even in that sense, they do a fairly good job telling you who these characters are, and if you're really that curious, you know where to go back and find more content featuring them. As it stands for what's been previously established, the Six not only work just fine, they're far more realized as characters than they ever have been before, and this story does make for a fantastic introduction to them if this is your first time with Zavok's crew. They are well defined and a legitimate threat. Their vague abilities are fully utilized, and for the first time in my life, I'm actually interested to see what's next for them. That's something Sonic Lost World failed to do with the hours I gave that game. This was a great time for a lot of other characters to shine. This is where we first meet Cream and Gemerald in this comic, and their story, especially the battle with Xena, was absolutely incredible. Vector firmly establishes why he's a respected leader, as goofy as he can be, and even when he's finally taken out in the Metal Virus, he goes down in one of the most memorable scenes of the entire story. Tangle, as well, keeps a smile firmly planted on her face even as she's turned, and the visceral reaction of Whisper having to learn that yet again she's lost somebody she loved, it's incredibly powerful. And outside of the Deadly Six, I also need to give a shout out to how the rest of the villains were handled. Metal Sonic, who was technically the first major baddie to be taken down in IDW, had a lot of characterization for the brief moments we had him, and that's amazing to me. I found him far more interesting here than when he had a mouth and a super form. His struggles to compete and replicate the real Sonic, and then being his savior in the last desperate moments of that final battle, I mean, they were just, that moment was glorious. People are frustrated with Shadow because we've watched him grow into something more than just a clone of Sonic, but Metal, that's his purpose. That's his design. That's who he will always be, whether he likes it or not. So seeing these fleeting moments with the bot have been very impactful. Starline, of course, being a villain new to this series, has immediately established himself as a far more engaging right-hand man than the likes of Snively ever was. And that's thanks to his very well-defined pompous attitude and his meddling that helped Eggman return to form. And it is Starline's particular MacGuffin that helped clean up this mess that he helped create. And as for Eggman himself, yes, I would have liked some more time with Mr. Tinker, and yes, I would have liked the saga to take place after a little more world building, but you gotta admit, the Doctor knows how to make an entrance. When IDW stopped teasing us with Neo's copy ability or Mr. Tinker, once the real deal stepped onto the field, he was quick to show the world that he was not messing around. And even if you never played Sonic Forces before, you can see how this dude managed to cause such a ruckus in such a short amount of time. Then again, Forces didn't really bother showing us that either. They kind of left out the most important chunk of that story, but whatever. And really, it was a risky move to spend this much time exploring this one idea. It got a little tedious waiting from month to month, especially when it was ironically delayed by a real-world pandemic, but I do think this really paid into the impact the Metal Virus had on this world. We could see the characters' exhaustion and desperation. You got to feel the impact it had on these characters that we've come to know in some form or another for decades now. seeing them torn down physically and emotionally, yet still continue to fight on, even when all hope feels lost, it made their victory at the end all the more rewarding. Things felt a little rushed with Super Sonic and Silver, and I really would have liked to explore why Sonic Speed had such an impact on the metal virus. I saw one commenter mentioning that it was probably Sonic's crazy metabolism that was helping keep things in check, again working just like a real virus, but a quick throwaway line would have been nice there. And also, I know us hardcore fans understand that the Master Emerald is a little loosey-goosey in terms of what it can do, but the IDW book itself confirms that it can charge super forms. And even if it's technically only robots, we need that explained, because they all meet up on Angel Island, and for some reason, they're desperate to grab the rest of the Chaos Emeralds, when, if you've just read this book, you have to wonder, why doesn't Sonic just rush over to the Master Emerald and use that to cure himself? And even then, this same book establishes that robots can go super. So what's to say that the Chaos Emeralds don't just fuel a zombotified Sonic? What if we just got a super zombot Sonic instead of him being cured? And again, this is one of those times where I know more hardcore fans are going to comment and saying, well, Super Sonic can heal, blah, 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 blah. None of this is explained in the comic book. That is my problem here. You need to have all of this make sense within the established universe. And every now and then, this is requiring you to go really deep into the Hedgehog's lore, when the lore itself is wildly inconsistent. And I still can't quite wrap my head around the logic of clearing the world of the virus with the Warp Topaz and Emerald Power. Please don't Eggman explain it to me in the comments. I read the book, I know how it works, it just feels flimsy to me. I appreciate how desperate things were getting as they shot down every solution, but again, if you shoot down everything else, you better have a damn good solution at the end of all of this. And at the end, it was just Chaos Emeralds again. And ultimately, they're still very vague about how any of these gems actually work. I mean, that Topaz could only make portals at first, but then they get very loosey-goosey on what the term warped actually means. And by the end of it, I wasn't really sure how it was actually all that different from the Emeralds or the Phantom Ruby. It can open portals, or it can warp memory, or it can warp reality. Like, sort that out. You can't just drop that in out of nowhere to whatever. This is a larger problem with Sonic's stories, and in terms of the Warp Topaz, they at least do a better job explaining some of the more specific abilities and power constraints. I just really would like this stuff a little further defined. Still, I'm not gonna lie, you heard me scream, I had a great time with that finale, because it really isn't all that different from other Sonic game stories, and that stayed consistent through the entire run. This felt like an elaborate pitch for a Sonic game, not only laying out the general narrative, but also going so far as to explain mechanics. Everything from Sonic having to run to keep the virus in check, even potential stealth sections with Tails, and letting heroes and villains shine in that final stretch for the fight for the Emeralds. Having a lot of these characters interact for the very first time. All that would make for one hell of a story and video game leading up to that final rush of Sonic, Metal, and Silver against the giant Zavok, and then having the Supers clear the world, and of course, cherry on top being that brilliantly designed Omega Mech boss fight. Flynn has a lot more restrictions and a lot less to work with when compared to his time on Archie, which already had a lot of restrictions after Sega had to tighten things up after all that lawsuit drama. And even with these constraints, Flynn hits it out of the park. This is a zombie story done Sonic style, not just in terms of narrative, but making the reader desperate to live out this story with a controller in hand. Even in the modern boost era interpretations of these characters, watered down and vanilla, being something more akin to a Mario cast, even in this setting, compelling emotional stories can be had when given to the right writer. It shows, despite the many complaints fans have these days, why we still love these characters. And yes, you can have emotionally engaging, intense narratives that's still safe for kids, that doesn't sound like it's talking down to its entire readership. And it doesn't feel out of place in a world full of colorful cartoon animals. Now, how they can ever top that or keep things compelling, I don't know. But I'm certainly sticking around to find out. This was Ian Flynn's last story as head writer of Sonic Comics. He's still around and he's still working on other Sonic projects, but staying on as the consistent head writer ended with the Metal Virus, and that was one hell of a high note to bow out on. Well done. But yeah, both good and bad, those are my thoughts. There were flaws, some fairly glaring ones, but some I felt the writer himself was very aware of and trying to address with the constraints he had. And at the end of the day, I loved what this story was, and I think it stands out as one of the most compelling narratives in the history of the Sonic franchise. And it does all this while making a brilliant pitch for a video game I would love to play, taking in things I've known and wanted while bringing in brand new ideas I could never even thought of. That's That's what a good Sonic game should do. But yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. It's finally time for us to put this story to rest. Thank you all for sticking with me through this crazy ride, and thank you to the patrons who've been supporting me. And let me give an extra special shout out to these fine folks who pitched in a little bit extra. Kyle Winter, Joseph Duncan Sonic 2 Blue, John, Macy Core, Ian Anonan, Ian, tell me how you say that. Hatsworth, Nick S, Dundun, Miles the Prower, Jeremy Singer, Mr. Boo J, Rain, Sam Webster, Fish Flop, Lucas Lipker, Mr. SP, Cecil the Gallade, Missing No, Stefan Stefan, tell me if I'm saying that wrong, please. Three Monic, Graham J Hall Audio, Leonard Zex, Wayne is Boss, Jamie Chevalier, RCT, Beanie, and 64 Bits. Seeing some brand new names here. Thank you guys so much for joining in. And for the people at the top of the list, thank you guys for being here as long as you have been. I actually know quite a few of you quite well thanks to our Discord server. And hey, if you're not a part of that, be sure you hop on because I spend a lot of time in there. Not so much these days, I'm on vacation, but otherwise you can find me there. You can find me on Twitter. And if you want to support me on Patreon, we'll have those links down below. But oh man, it is finally time to end our coverage on the metal virus. Now what I cover next? Well, you'll just have to stick around and find out. But until next time, toot toot, Sonic Warriors.